Welcome to America's Top Rebbitzins. In the merit of this class, may Hashem bring home all the hostages, watch over all the Jewish people, and give enormous strength to the IDF soldiers, including David Shmuel ben Yael, David Yisrael ben Shoshana Blima, Dvir ben Yonah, and Eden Rachel. Please click on the subscribe button to subscribe to us on the America's Top Rebbitzins YouTube page, or click follow to follow us on your podcasting app so that you are the first to know when an inspiring new episode is posted. Today, I am excited to welcome Rabbanit Chamutal Shoval. Rabbanit Chamutal is the director of the Susi Bradfield Women's Institute of Halakhic Leadership. She holds a master's degree in new media and communication, as well as a bachelor's degree in humanities and psychology from Hebrew University. Rabbanit Chamutal has been published in the Drisha Journal of Bar Ilan University, and she serves as a posket halakha for her students and her community. Thank you so much for being here. Please tell us more about yourself and what you do.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure, and I love your podcast. It's amazing. It's so inspiring. So
Thank
thank
you
you.
so much. Appreciate it.
So I'm a mother of five girls, and I live in Neve Daniel in Israel. We just came back at the end of the summer from 2 years in the States, where I taught in New Jersey, and I also served as college residents in a few communities, and it's been a great adventure for my family. Even though when the war broke, we just wanted to go home, but we stayed till the summer, and it's been really enlightening. And we saw and we learned so much, and also we hiked. We got to see the amazing United States, like good Israelis. We walked from place to place, and we drove all over. And I am a person who loves Torah. I teach Torah, and I learn a lot of Torah. And I think that we need a lot more women to learn Torah seriously, in depth, to know Halakha, to be able to speak the language of Halakha, and to be able to help so many women who need someone to reach out to. I just got a question 5 minutes ago on WhatsApp, and from someone who I never knew, I never met, and she got my number from someone. And I try to do whatever I can to help these women from all across the world with questions and sometimes problems. And I'm so happy that Hashem gave me the ability to help, if I can't, to these women. And this is it in a nutshell.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And if anybody has any questions, is it okay if I'll have them email me and then I can give them your email? So if somebody has a question, they can connect with you.
Sure, sure.
Wonderful. Okay. So I know that you're passionate about Torah and about Talmud study and halacha study for women. So before our interview, you mentioned that deep Torah learning is like diving into the sea, and I totally agree. There is so much to discover. I mean, you learn the answers to questions you never even knew to ask. Like, you didn't even know the questions existed to even ask them. So I also like the analogy that you shared with me beforehand about when you go to the beach. You can enjoy the beauty of the beach, the excitement of the beach, but the moment you dive beneath the surface, into the ocean, into the water, you get to see the richness below. You realize just how much you've missed by staying on the shore in the sand. So that's very, very profound and very deep, just like Torah. And, on that note, I'm ready to take this deep dive into Torah with you. And to make sure that we're all on the same page, can you please explain to us what the Talmud is and why, particularly, it's so important for women to learn about it?
Okay, so as we know, we have the Torah Shebichtav, and then we have the Mishnah, the Torah Shebel Peh. But the Talmud is all of what the Amoraim and the Tanaim, our great great rabbis from 2,000 years ago, sat down and said we have to explain the Mishnah. We have to be able to explain to people what exactly they have to do. So what they were doing, they were sitting in their Bet Midrash, mainly in Bavel, and trying to explain every bits and pieces of the Mishnah in order for us to be able to fulfill Torah completely. And it's like walking into a Bet Midrash, because when you open a Gemara, they assume you're part of the discussion. And what you get to hear is the discussion itself, and the questions and the answers. And sometimes in between, there are amazing stories about the Tanaim and the Amoraim, and you get to see where everything began. Because we know, we read the Torah, right? We come to shul and we hear the stories and the mitzvot every Shabbat morning. But when we want to know exactly why the halacha was set this way and that way, and we want to get closer to Hashem, I think that we have to be able to open the Talmud, the Gemara, and say, oh, that's amazing. This discussion, what does that mean? And also, as I always say to my students, it's not about the bottom line. It's about understanding the ways of thinking that the rabbis had, because they could have eliminated the discussions and just said, you know what? We had an argument about this and that, and this is what we decided. But by learning the discussions, you're like, oh, I understand where halakha is coming from. I understand what this rabbi was thinking, what this rabbi was thinking, and now I can comprehend the halakha as a whole. And it's beautiful just knowing the differences between the rabbis. And I'll share a quick story. One of the most famous chavrutas in the Gemara are Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish was a thief, a former thief. He became a Baal Tshuva, and he became Rabbi Yochanan's best friend and his chavruta. And as we learn their Torah, we can see that their stories reflect within their Torah, their discussions. It's amazing. Rabbi Yochanan, when he first met Reish Lakish, he said, you have so many powers. You should be a scholar. You should be a rabbi. And he said to him, and if you become a friend of mine and you'll be a Baal Tshuva, you can marry my sister. So not only they became chavrutas and best friends, they also became brothers-in-law. And their story is amazing. And we can see how when they have powerful discussions about halakha and they disagree so many times, we can also see that their backgrounds are part of the discussion. And it's beautiful. And also, it's not something that is everyone's perfect. When we learn halacha and when we learn their discussions and their disagreements, we also get a chance to see who they were and see their stories. And they had the same issue that we're dealing with. They had them as well. They were wondering about what to do when you have issues with kibudurim, with your parents, and things are difficult, or even with your spouse, and you have to get along, and your kids, everything that we're dealing with, they already dealt with, and it's beautiful to get to know them and to get to see why halacha was written in the way that it was, and what was left out. So it's beautiful. I love it.
That is gorgeous. And just so everybody understands, halachas, those are the laws of the Torah, right? Is that what you mean by yeah, the halachot? Halachot is
Yes,
plural. So, okay.
exactly, exactly.
Beautiful. And so why, like I know you're really passionate about women. I know men typically study this. So we're not talking about men here, but women didn't always have the opportunity in educational history to study the Talmud. So I wanted to see if maybe we can bring in your thoughts about why it's so important specifically for women to study the Talmud.
I think that for so many years, women didn't study Talmud, they didn't study Torah at all, but also they didn't study a lot of other things. And I think in the last century, as we see women go into every field of life, they can be lawyers and politicians and doctors and everything else. I think that we can't leave their Torah education, their Halakhic education, in the same degree that it was 100 years ago. Meaning, my grandmother, who's a wonderful, wonderful woman, may she have arichut yamim. She was a secretary and she was great at it and she loved it, but she never got to actually learn more than that. And this is why also she says, I'm going to shul and I hear the Torah and I say my Tehillim and it's great for me. But I'm saying I'm looking at the next generation and I'm looking at my kids and they're learning everything. They learn physics and chemistry and history and literature. And I want them to also know their Torah. I want them to know everything they need to know about their Jewish identity because I don't want there to be a situation in which they know philosophy from school and math at the highest level. And when I ask them about Jewish philosophy, about their identity, about why they do what they don't have good answers. Because in order to have good answers, you have to really learn seriously and dive into every aspect. And I'm saying maybe you won't love Gemara and maybe you're not going to be into it, and it's okay. But I want you to be able to know how to open this book, how to read, how to know what you're looking at. Whereas Rashi, the commentators, the text is very interesting to look at, just to know your way about it and not to stay behind as opposed to everything else that you're learning. And you can have a PhD in history. And I think that if you learn so many years, you also have to put time into Torah because it's part of who you are.
And I really, really appreciate you saying that because I have this struggle also with some of my girls there, and all my kids took. I have three children. All of them took Gemara. All of them struggled with Gemara, and I have two still in school. And it's so hard for them and they get so frustrated and they're trying their best but they just can't. I have actually a tutor, a Gemara tutor. I spend so much money on the Gemara tutor because I feel it's so important. You pay for what you feel is important. And my daughter, my 16-year-old told me yesterday, she specifically said, Mom, I'm so glad that you have this particular tutor because otherwise she's the only person I learn Torah from. I can't learn it from
Yeah,
school. I can't understand it from school. I'm like, yes, my money is well spent.
exactly. Exactly. And I
Yeah.
also want them to be able to say, this is how what we're doing, what we're living our lives by, which is halacha, this is how it all started. And it has a meaning, and it's not something that just came about with no reason. And when you
Right.
get to see the foundation of it, how it all started, I think it really helps you connect to observing halacha. Because sometimes it's very hard for our kids, and also, let's be honest, to us to get up in the morning and say, okay, I have to say shacharit. I have to daven in the morning. And I want to understand, how did it all start? What was the beginning of it? And also, I learned the story in the Gemara about the rabbis, the Amoraim, two of them who were saying specifically, it's really hard for us to concentrate during davening. And I'm like, oh my God, I thought it was only me. And now I see these amazing rabbis, and they're saying, yes, we're into learning, but it's really hard for us to concentrate in order to daven. And I felt like, okay, this is something I can totally relate to. And I say, this is something that I have to work on. But also, it was hard for other people as well, even if they were big rabbis. So it kind of gives me the opportunity to also learn about their lives, not only their halacha and their Torah, but also about their lives. And they're giving me so many ideas that I can learn from and relate. And it's beautiful.
Isn't that interesting that the rabbis are relatable? You think, oh my gosh, they're so high up in the sky, they're so perfect, they know everything, but they're there we go. Like they're struggling with exactly what we're struggling with.
Exactly.
Do you have any advice for me or for maybe other parents who have children who struggle, or again, like for us who struggle themselves, like just to get through that Gemara or to understand, it's hard, especially for kids in school. Why do I have to learn this? With any subject, not just Gemara. We're talking about Gemara now or Talmud, but like just to give them a hizuk, just like those words of strength and wisdom, just to help push them forward a little bit.
So I think you should really choose which masechet, because the Gemara has a few different masechtot, 24 different ones, and you really have to choose carefully. And that's not on them, that's on their teachers. But really choose the important ones, the relatable ones, the ones that you're easier to learn and you feel like you're connected to. Because when I taught Masechet Brachot, it's about the blessings and about the davenings last year, and I had the kids really connect because, for example, I gave them a list of things that they ask. Like you get up in the morning and you want to say thank you to Hashem and you want to ask for things, and it's okay. What's on your mind? What do you want to ask for? And then each of my students made a list of the things that they need. And I said, whatever it is that you want. You want a new phone? That's okay. You can ask Hashem. Just make a list of things that are on your mind or you want. And it was beautiful. They made these lists. And then I said, that's amazing. For every day when you wake up in the morning, yes, you should speak to Hashem and ask whatever it is you need and just say whatever is on your mind. But on Shabbat, that's the only day that you're not asking. You're not in an asking position. You're just
Right.
talking about this special day. And then I taught them the Gemara about the difference between davening on every day of the week and davening on Shabbat. And I said exactly what you just wrote reflects on the Gemara. This is what they're saying. They're saying it's okay to ask and to be preoccupied with things that are on our mind, and it's okay. But also know that one day a week, you're not asking. You're just being there. You're thinking about the special day and what it can give you. And the kids were like, oh, it makes sense. It makes sense that maybe we should, if it's a different day, maybe we should ask for different things or not ask at all. And it's really, really relatable. And I think it's amazing. I'll give you another example. When I taught Masechet Megillah is all about Purim. And I told them that I want them to flip to the seventh page of the Masechet, the first day of class. And they said, why don't we start at the beginning? And I said, because the secret is on the seventh page. And what happens on the seventh page is just an amazing, amazing conversation between Queen Esther and the sages and the rabbis. And they're saying, we don't know if you should be part of the Tanakh, if your story is important enough. Is it miraculous enough? And there's some kind of a dialogue between them. And she says, I have to be part of the Tanakh. My story is so important for all of Am Yisrael. And they go back and forth. And I ask my students, isn't it embarrassing that this dialogue is part of the Gemara? They could just, delete it and say, okay, final answer, this book has to be part of the Tanakh. And I asked the kids, why is this in the Gemara? And they came up with amazing, amazing reasons. And I said to them, you're right. Sometimes it's not only about what's the bottom line, it's about thinking about this idea. Should the story be in the Tanakh? Because, it doesn't have the name of Hashem in the story. Also, it doesn't happen in Israel, like all kinds of reasons. And the sages, the rabbis are actually telling her, if your story is going to be part of the Tanakh, you're going to cause anti-Semitism. And she says, yes, but it's also going to give strength for so many Jews around the world throughout history. And she's right, and they're right. And just seeing these two perspectives give the kids so much to think of. And then I told them, okay, we're going to have this kind of a debate. Half the class is going to be on Queen Esther's side, and the other half of the class is going to be on the rabbi's side. And you're going to try to convince each other. And I told them, this is what Gemara is all about. Knowing how to discuss issues, and it's okay to disagree, but also to learn from one another, which I think is the most profound idea of the Tanakh, knowing how to speak to different people. And today, across of Am Yisrael, we have so many issues that we argue about and disagree about, and we have to learn from the Gemara, from the Talmud, how to have discussions, but to really respect one another and learn from one another, and not only to think about my side of the story, my opinion. It's something that we all have to learn.
That is so beautiful. I never thought of it that way, but you're right. Yeah, because you're explaining this rabbi thought this rabbi said that. Should we have this, together? Should we present this to the public? And I love that because if you think about Hollywood, when they make a movie, if the scene isn't great, they delete it. Like they just cut it out.
Exactly.
You wouldn't know by watching the movie that they deleted 10 scenes from the movie. And the movie is beautiful as it is, but this way it's almost like including the rawness and the realness of what the people were going through. This way, everybody could see that. I mean, everybody struggles with something, and this is what we went through, and this was the discussion, and this is how it came out. And then now you're seeing the final product, but also with how the final product came to be.
Exactly. And I think that teens nowadays, they struggle with a
Yes,
lot of what we're trying to teach them.
yes,
And there's, I don't know, around me, I don't know, maybe it's not an issue in the States, but I know it is. Um, Mainly teen girls talk about modesty, about rules. Why do we have to have rules about the way that we dress?
yes.
Why should we have a dress code? It's okay. And I had a friend who was a convert, and she was an amazing girl, and she wanted to be Jewish. And when she was going through this process, she came to me one day and she said, there's something you have to explain to me because I really don't get it. And she said, why do you have all these rules about the way that men and women dress? Why can't you just tell people, just dress honorably or whatever you think is right for you? Why isn't it okay? So I told her, you know what? You're a reasonable person. And when you're telling people dress reasonably and make it look okay, it's not what everybody does. Each and every one of us has a different way of seeing what reasonable is. And I think that, yes, we should have dress codes and we should have halakha telling us what to do, because if you look around, sometimes people around you are not dressing in a reasonable way. And also, I had this discussion in school when I was a teacher. The kid said to me, we don't want to be forced to pray, to daven in the morning. So I told him, you know what? Let's think about it. What would happen if I would tell you tomorrow morning, do whatever you want? I want you to daven, but you should just choose. And they looked at me and then they looked at each other and they started laughing. And they said, well, we're not going to come in the morning. So I said, yes, sometimes you have to have boundaries. You have to say, this is what we're doing. Because if we're going to leave it up to you, then reasonable is very different. And also saying, I would want to daven, but maybe tomorrow. And the next day, maybe tomorrow. So I think that halacha gives us a system to work within. And sometimes it's hard for us, let's be honest. But
Yes.
also, in a way, it's easier because it helps us form a way of living and not thinking about doing everything from the get go. For example, a whole different example in Avelut, when someone, God forbid, dies, and we don't know what to do. In a Shiva, we have everything structured. We know how to sit and what to eat, and even not to say hi to people who come in the door. And it's so much easier because it lets you focus on what's important. And you have this structure. And I always say to teens, I know it's hard because all you want to do is rebel against everything that we tell you. But having a structure is really something that helps us navigate our lives. So I think it's important to talk about it.
That's really beautiful. Very, very well said. Thank you. So now that we have a comprehensive understanding about what the Talmud is and why it's so important for women to study these holy books, I wanted to ask you about halakha. And we've been talking about halakha, but I wanted to see if maybe we can go a little bit further into depth. If you can please explain to us what halakha is and also give us a few different examples of halachot and explain the significance of halakha in our daily lives.
So halakha is actually the ground rules of being an observant Jew. What you have to do throughout your day, how you live your life. It could talk about the way that, as we said, it's a dress code system, but it's also how you treat one another, that you shouldn't speak behind people's backs. It's not, it's about everything. It's about like a guidance book for yourself, how to be kind to other people, how much tzedakah, how much money to give to people who are in need. But also it talks about what you should and should not eat. And for Israelis, it's very hard when we go abroad and we're in the middle of Europe on this amazing site,
Yep.
and we have to figure out what to eat. And for Americans, it's easier because they know the OU symbol and they know what to look for. But Israelis are used to going into the supermarket and everything's kosher. So halakha even tells you, yes, what you should and should not eat and how to cook your food. And it gives you really a structure of your life. What do you do after 6 days of working? One day, you're getting off your phone, you're not working, and you're concentrating about being with your family, about going to shul and being with your community. And it really helps you navigate your life. Sometimes people say it's too hard because the system is not something that I want to live by. But I think as a community and also as families, it really gives us guidance. And I'll give you an example. Long before we all spoke about the Me Too movement, Halakha gave us the notion of yichud. Yichud means that a man and woman who are not married to one another should not be together somewhere in a closed place like an office or someone's house with no one else besides them. Why? It's not because we suspect them of anything, God forbid. It's because we want to say, listen, if you're not married to one another, make sure there are other people around you. Don't be in an isolated place in the middle of the night because something might happen or someone may say something. So just protect yourself and think of the right and proper way to behave, even if it's a workplace and it's a late meeting. Don't be there by yourself. Don't be there alone. It's easier. And I think when a person comes to work and it's awkward to say, listen, I don't want to be here all by myself. But you could just say, I observe halakha, and halakha is telling me that I shouldn't be here alone with you. So if someone else is in the office, it's okay, or it's the middle of the day, people are coming and going, but don't put yourself in difficult situations that you don't want to be in. So I think that it gives us kind of like very safe boundaries, but also it helps us instead of us having to define the system and define our boundaries the whole time. Halakha is telling us this is the system, obey the system, and it's a lot easier. It also defines, as I say, what you eat and the way that you keep and your kitchen, and you don't mix dairy and meat products. You keep it separate, but also where you invest your money with interest and with no interest. And here in Israel, we also have a set of rules about the fruits that we eat, that we grow outside in our gardens. There's a whole set of rules because we want to remember the temple, Bet HaMikdash, that we had so many years ago. So it's some kind of like a big system that we live within and we believe in. And sometimes, to be honest, we struggle with some of the rules, and it's okay. It's a system that we talk about and we learn about, and throughout our lives, we aspire to do more and more.
I think that's so beautiful. And I see, how it really does apply to our day-to-day lives. You learn about the concept, but then yeah, when you're in Europe and you don't see those hextures or symbols, I know I was recently in Switzerland in January. So a few months ago I was in Switzerland and I faced the same thing. And it's so interesting because so we're recording this in February and this is President's Week. So here we have President's Week vacation. So I just went with my family to Oregon. I live in New York. We went to Oregon. And so there's not a lot of kosher food in Oregon. There just isn't. It's an out-of-town community. Portland is very, very small, and we weren't even in Portland. So I cooked and froze a whole bunch of food and I brought it with us.
Wow.
And that's how
Oh,
we did it and my husband said, if you're gonna live outside of New York, LA, Chicago, Miami, the big places where you can go to a
yeah,
kosher restaurant anytime, you really, really have to be strong and you really have to put a lot of thought into it. I couldn't have just gone with nothing. You know what I mean? Yes, maybe I could have gotten peanut butter and jelly and bread in the store, like those kinds of
yeah.
things, yes. But like if you want like a real meal, you have to really think in advance. And if you follow halacha, you need to put a lot of thought into it. You really, really do. And I mean, that's just for food, but obviously for other things also.
But think of the amazing idea that you take an halakha observant Jew throughout the world, and he's hiking in the middle of Europe,
Yeah.
and he's looking for a kosher place, and the people he gets to meet are other Jews. I think it's beautiful. Like
Yes.
part of the reasoning is that we want Jews to be able to eat with Jews and hang out with Jews and one day marry Jews. And this is why
100%.
we tell them, yes, you're keeping kashrut and it's important to you. And this is why we're going to make you be together. I was in Vienna 2 months ago, and it's beautiful to see how Erev Shabbos, Friday afternoon, you see all the Jews walking to Chabad together, and it just connects us in a way. It's not only, oh, I'm going into this restaurant and I can't eat anything. It's about where you should eat and where you should go and hang out and be with other Jews. So in a way, it also connects you. It is hard to be in the middle of a city and saying, I wish I could buy this ice cream. On the other hand, at the end of the day, when you go and you schlep to this kosher place, you get to meet so many other Jews. So there's a lot of simplicity, and also it makes so much sense in a way. Even though my kids would complain, oh, I would love this ice cream in the middle of nowhere,
Of
but I
course.
would tell them at the end of the day, we get to meet other Jews from around the world because we all keep kosher. So it's beautiful.
And it is. And to that point, it is really, really nice. It really, really connects us. And then you feel more comfortable when you see or when a Jewish person approaches you and or you approach a Jewish person, like that's somebody from my family, even if it's not, from your blood family, you've never seen them before. Like, Jews connect to each other through the mitzvot that they keep, through the halachot. It's really, really beautiful that way.
Beautiful.
I know that something also that you're especially passionate about and that's really, really important to you is the concept of women writing. You mentioned beforehand, before our interview, that over the past 30 years, women have learned how to open books. They study Talmud, they study Halakha, and now the next stage has arrived where they need to write and make their own voices heard. So we just want to see if you can talk to us about what you mean by this and how do you think that women can accomplish it?
Oh, right. As we spoke earlier, I think that thank God women now know like how to approach books. Not everyone, but so many of them, they teach and they learn Parsha and they learn Gemara and they learn so many different books. But I want them to be also on the bookshelf. I want them to be part of it. We were talking earlier about Queen Esther and this dialogue that she had with the rabbis. And within this dialogue, there is a phrase that I love, and it says in Hebrew, "Kitvuni ledorot." I want to be remembered for generations. And how is she remembered for generations? She knew that if her story would be written down, then we would remember her. And I always say to my female students, to the women who learn in the kollel, I said, this is your time. And I don't think that male rabbis or rabbaniyot can answer halachic questions differently. But I do think that sometimes there is a woman's perspective that has to be part of the question. Sometimes I get halachic questions from women, and as I said before, sometimes I don't know them. And I asked, "How did you get my phone number?" So usually she says, "My friend sent it to me," and I said, um, "What would you do if I wasn't here? If you wouldn't get my phone number?" And sometimes they would say, "I would ask no one. I would stay with this issue and the problem because I need someone accessible to me." And I need someone to relate. And sometimes even, it's sometimes it could be embarrassing questions. And I say, anything you need, you could ask me. And she said, I really appreciate it because sometimes I'm too embarrassed to go to a male rabbi. And I also think that women have a different perspective about so many issues, and they know how they see their place within the halacha. And I want them to write it, and I want them to be part of the discussion. What I've written about in the past is, as I don't know, some of our viewers or listeners know, there's a special bracha that you're saying when you have a daughter. And in the past, there was a bracha for a daughter and a different bracha for a son, for a baby boy and for a baby girl. And I was discussing this issue. Maybe nowadays we can have the same bracha in a way that so many years ago, people said, well, if we have a baby boy, one day he'll be part of the family business. He could have our name. He's going to stay next to us. He's going to help us provide for the family. And parents were really happy. And when they had a baby girl, they said, okay, one day she will go and join her husband's family. She's not going to be in our area. She's not going to support us. She's going to have a new name, and they spelled differently. So Halacha was saying when a baby boy is born, you have to say Hatov Hamitiv. That's a kind of a bracha that is a goodness for you, and it's something that the whole community is celebrating. But when a baby girl is born, you have to say Shechianu, because it's like it's something good, of course, but it's not something that everyone share the goodness. And what I saw in the article that I wrote, the things have changed, and a lot of poskim are saying, yes, nowadays we might be able to change the bracha, because nowadays when a mom has a baby girl or a baby boy, I think she has the same level of happiness and gratitude to Hashem. And what I've shown in this halakhic article is that yes, people feel differently. I don't know any of my friends who, since they got married, stopped taking care of their parents. Vice
Right.
versa, even they're very connected to their families, and they celebrate everything with their families. And it's not like you're moving away to your husband's tribe and everything changes. Yes, people move away and people do different things, but it has nothing to do with you being your parents' daughter or your parents' son. So I've shown how reality changes, and halacha reflects it, and it's beautiful. Because if in the past people would say, I'm not as happy with a baby girl, now they say, of course we are. So I think we need this special perspective that women who've been learning for many, many years, and now they know halakha and they know all the books, the Shulchan Aruch, and all the other commentators throughout the generations, they can give their perspective and be part of this amazing project of having so many halakhic books. And Torah keeps being written every day. When we're learning it, when writing it, it's something that always continues. And I think women have to be part of it right now.
I love that. And they can offer their perspective, like their perspective. Like we were hearing about the rabbi's perspective. Now we can hear about the women's perspective. It's beautiful.
Exactly. Exactly.
So I am so blown away by all the information and the concepts that we have been talking about. You've been giving me like a different perspective on ways to look at Talmud and Torah and Halakha and even learning those subjects. I mean, it's true that you can be a good Jew without studying, but learning Torah really does bring us closer to Hashem, and it opens up a beautiful world for us. If you stop to think about it, there is so much beauty and love in Torah. So what would you say to a woman who hasn't yet begun studying Torah, but would very much like to start learning? Where can we start learning by taking our first steps? Where should we go? Or, maybe there's a woman who started her Torah journey, but she would like to continue. Maybe she'd like to go even deeper in her learning. Where can she go? Or what can she do to make her learning even more deeper and robust?
So first of all, I'm so excited for her because the first step is amazing one. And I think I would start, if it's your first step, I would start with a parsha, with a portion of the Torah that is being read in shul every Shabbat, and feeling this connection to the Jewish people, that everyone around the globe, it doesn't matter where you go, you hear the exact portion of the Torah every week. And they're amazing people who've written on the Torah, commentators. They could be old, they could be new. You have to find something that speaks to you. Thank God there's so many books today in every language. And you can hear a podcast and even watch a video, anything that you connect to, I would start there. And moving on, I would say start with a Mishnah. as we said, Gemara is a little bit more complicated. It's not even in Hebrew. Some of it is in Aramaic and you need translations. I would say start with Mishnah. Learn the short verses of Halakha that was written in Hebrew, and it's a lot easier to understand. And say to yourself, I'm going to learn a small portion every day. What we're doing now in my family, the kids were saying that since we went abroad and then we came back, some of them missed a little bit of their Tanakh studies. So I said, you know what? As a family, every Friday night, we will learn one chapter of Tanakh and talk about it. And it's amazing. And they're so into it. And they ask questions. And every week it's like, okay, does anyone remember what we learned last week? Like watching a Netflix series saying the last chapter is last week's portion. And then we're going into the story. That what I would do. Start with the Torah portion and then go into Tanakh, the later stories. And the next step is going into learning Mishnah. But I think the most important thing is to find someone that you can learn from and you relate to. And they're inspiring because thank God today we have so many people. It can be online, it could be in person, it could be a neighbor that you want to learn with and form a chavruta. Don't be alone. Don't stay with yourself and say, okay, this is too exhausting, or there's something that I don't understand. Always have someone that you can talk to about this learning or learn from. Go to shir if you find around you, or log online and find something. Don't do it by yourself, because I think part of the journey, and I relate again to the Talmud, is about conversation. It's about speaking out your ideas, thinking it out loud, and really trying to think of these ideas. And if you have someone who's learning it with you, or you're learning from them, you could always ask questions. You can always ask anything. We're all about asking and raising ideas. And there's nothing that you cannot ask. Anything. Everything is on the table and everything is open. So I think my biggest recommendation is find someone. Find a friend or a tutor or a rabbi or a rabbanit that you can learn from, because doing it on your own is hard, and it's easy to keep up if you have someone with you on this journey.
That's really, really good advice. And I also want to say, some people don't know how to read Hebrew, so they can't learn the text in Hebrew, but it's fine. You can learn it in English and Spanish and Russian, whatever your language is. It's fine if you can't speak Hebrew. Like, don't feel like that's going to limit you.
Exactly. Exactly. Just saying today, nowadays, when everything is translated and we have so many books to learn from and relate
Yes.
to, you have to find the thing that speaks to you. Because when something is inspiring for you, you're getting into it in a deep way. And I want you to be inspired by Torah. I always say to my students, you have to love it, but also you have to, when you're learning Torah, you have to become a better person. It has to make you a better person. This is what Torah is supposed to be for us. Not only an inspiration, not only a way of life, but also something that at the end of the day makes us better people, to think about our ideas, to think about, are we taking care of one another enough? There's a halacha question that I teach my students every year. And the question is, can we go and visit someone who's sick if we're only logging on Zoom and he's on the other side? Is this enough to fulfill the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim? If I have a friend who's sick and he's far away, or I can't go, or like something just comes up, and I'm saying, okay, instead of going to their house, I'm just gonna just say open FaceTime and we'll speak. And the rabbi who wrote the tshuva it's an amazing tshuva. He says, on the first day when your friend is sick, go in person. Why? Because when you go to their house, you could also see if they need someone to sweep the floor, if they need someone to make tea for them, if they need someone to run and get their medicine. It's not the same if you're not there in person. And he gives us like a really deep understanding of this mitzvah. He said it's not about checking the box and saying, okay, I saw my friend, he's fine, Bikur Cholim is done. He's saying the mitzvah is trying to push you into getting out, going into their house, bring cookies, make them a fresh pot of tea, really take care of your friend. Make sure that you're doing the right thing. Yes, you can see them on FaceTime, but it's not the same. And I say to my students, yes, learning Torah is amazing and it's something that you have to do. But if your friend is sick, close your Gemara, get up and go to their house and knock on their door and make sure that they have everything they need. And we shouldn't think of ourselves as something as better people if we learn. We should be humble. We should know that whatever we're learning, there's always a lot more to learn. But we have to become better people. If we're really, really good Torah learners, this is how it's supposed to change us. To think of ideas, but also to look around us and say, the people around me, did I take care of them enough? Do I care about them? Am I listening to what they have to say? So I think this is what the most important thing is, to make sure that the Torah that you learn doesn't make you feel very highly of yourself. The opposite, to be a humble person and to look around you and say, how did I become a better person today because of what I've learned?
That's wow. That is really, really beautiful. You really hit the nail on the head because yes, you can learn and learn and learn and learn and learn, but it doesn't change you. If it doesn't help you grow as a person, then it's just knowledge, just like history is knowledge, just like secular studies is knowledge. I mean, which is fine. It's great to have knowledge, but the point specifically of Torah knowledge, of Jewish knowledge, is to improve you and to make you a better person and to elevate you. It's beautifully said and it's right on point. So thank you. Thank you so much, Rabbanit Chamutal, for joining us in America's Top Rebbitzins. And in the merit of this class, may Hashem watch over all the Jewish people and give enormous strength to the IDF hostages, including David Shmuel ben Yael, David Yisrael ben Shoshana Blima, Devir ben Yona, and Eden ben Rachel. Thank you.
So, to all of Am Israel, thank you so much for having me.